Today's going to be a very interesting day. In the next couple of days it's supposed to warm up a bit. I don't know what a bit means. Not yet. But because it's really still cold, I'm going to do some work in the cellar before I make any decision about pulling the front wheel. But that is the next part on the FZR restoration. But I want to do a little paint test for Luciano's Cafe Racer first. And it'll be a good investment to test the paint. I'll test about the black paint in an airbrush and on our test panel before I ever even go near the motorcycle. Just because we're using different kinds of paint. Again, it's a high-risk thing that we're doing, but we're going to hopefully get it right. And it will truly be a thrill if it goes up above freezing today, which I'm not holding my breath here. I'm not holding my ice shovel. So the next part of our actually working on the FZR is going to entail getting that front wheel off. It's a little too chilly to go out there. I have a couple hours to spend today, and I guess I'll start working on Luciano's Cafe Racer. Now you're right, remember what I did yesterday. At the end of the day, I painted this with Rust-Oleum. I put it up by the heating vent to dry. So it's dried about a little less than 24 hours. And obviously it's got a nice finish on it. It's a Rust-Oleum finish. There's nothing not to like. But what I wanted to do, I wrote each day on it, I want to do a little paint test. Because what would typically happen, especially if you use high penetrating thinner, I'll airbrush a little bit on this, and I'm going to do it with Luciano's paint. And if it turns to an alligator or I have some problem, at least I'll know about it without having ruined one of his good parts. Then if it doesn't do it, I can do a little test each time I paint and just see at what day, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, how long it's going to take for that before I can put the urethane paint right on top. So this is the paint Luciano wanted me to use. He said it already has the thinner in it, but I'm going to load up the airbrush and I'm going to do the test on the glass. If that works, I'll mask off one side cover, and if that doesn't show me any problem, I'll be willing to put the time in, because it takes a lot of time to lay out those ladders. I hate to have a problem with the paint when I could have tested it on a piece of glass, and then if I have to, make some other adjustment. And we don't know what that adjustment is until we see if this is going to work. Okay, we're using an Iwata airbrush, and the paint exactly as Luciano gave it to me. It's already got thinner in it. Let's see if it's going to work. So this is going to be with an airbrush. Now an airbrush puts very little thinner onto the paint, so this probably is going to work fine. But if I were to spray this with some thinner, guaranteed there'd be a problem. Now I know I'm really playing it very conservative with this. Number one, because these parts, you know, they're 20, 30 years old, whatever they are. And you never know, with plastic especially. And I don't want to, the risk I'm always afraid of is that you put all the work into doing the ladders, and that is really a lot of work. And getting it right, getting it airbrushed, and then you have a paint problem. I don't think we're going to have a problem. I think this is going to work out well. Now, one of the reasons is the paint Luciano sent is relatively thick. There's really not enough thinner in it. If the truth were known, it should be a little thicker. But for an airbrush, not for a spray gun, because I can tell by the way the edges have fogged in. But that's to our advantage, because there's not enough thinner penetrating in there. I wish I would have asked Luciano to bring some of that thinner over just to look at it. So now that I have this part, I feel good. I can move on to the next part of this test. And the next part is, I want to take the actual part, I want to take some 2000 grit sandpaper and just scuff it up. The only reason I'm going to scuff it up is because when you do a spray can job, a spray can usually doesn't have a lot of thinner in it. It's a minimum amount of thinner. And it leaves an orange peely, not an unobjectionable surface, but we'll try to make it a little bit better. And well, just let me show how this is going to look after it's got some 2000 grit sanding done. And this is the paper that I would use for sanding the Rust-Oleum, the 2000 grit Rhino Wet Indasa. This is really good sandpaper for what we're going to do with it. I don't want to sand through because I don't want to have to redo the white. Just lightly scuff it as much as I can to get out any of the orange peel and then stop. Now the issue is always, most of the restoration stuff that I do in the shop, the parts are very old. And the historic bikes especially, you really, good luck getting parts that are in nice condition. These actually look like they're in nice condition for older parts. Now, there's another part of this. I don't think, if you looked at this bike the day we picked it up from the Mafia junkyard, I think you would have said, oh my God, what a lot of work that's going to be. And you'd be right. But I think Luciano's up for the challenge, and this is the part that I want to make just a little bit nicer than it might have otherwise been if we just did a normal restoration. I'd like to put a really nice finish on this for him. He's excited about this. I'm excited about my future cafe bike. I'm already spending every day. My world's quietest compressor kicks on. And that's quiet after we made a muffler for it. Anyway, that's about all I need to do. Get up around the edges. I don't want to go through. Just want to get the orange peel off. Alright, now since this is going to be yellow and black, the stripe for the tank, the ladders are going to be on the bottom, so I thought the top should be yellow. I wanted to split this in half. Nothing special about it. I'll go right through the bolts. Try to get it parallel. I just think it'll add a nice little touch without really adding a lot of work. And this way I can jack up the bill a couple of dollars. Or more. Alright, so I got to get out a little tin foil. Back mask this. Now this will be the moment of truth. Let me get the razor. This will be the moment of truth. And if this melts, this side cover, then I've got to go on to plan B, which is going to be to reprime these, seal them with sealer, which we hope we don't have to do, of course. We get the edge of the tape down. And so that'll be the first. If this doesn't melt, doesn't show me any problems, it dries up, I'll go right on to do the other part. I know this is hard to believe. Sometimes I even can't believe it. Karen is making more cookies. I think she holds me prisoner. She's like, she knows I'm addicted to cookies. Oh, how lovable. We got a brand new roll of tin foil that isn't cooperating. Look at this. I guess I'll take it out. Anyway, the method I've always used for, and I always like to thank Walt Prey for it, because in the past I had used magazine pages and different things with not so good results. I haven't opened up a new roll of tin foil in a while. I didn't realize. I didn't remember that you always have to get, and that's a good tip by the way, you have to get that first thing off. They put chewing gum and you don't want to get that near your paint job. So that of course is a good tip. And that's the whole objective of doing videos. Some good tips, some good information, something you can really use in the real world. Not a hocus pocus. Boy, and some of the tips those guys give on the river table videos, boy, am I addicted to that. I just can't believe how nice some of them look. I wonder, you know, they never tell you what they pay for them or what the customers pay for them. They probably do cutty prices. Who knows? Who knows? Who can tell? Yes, is it time to take the cookies out? Yes, yeah, cookies coming out. Now, I'm not sure if you can see, but most, but not all of the orange peel. I don't want to go down into the paint to where I'm taking a chance on going through, but most of the orange peel, it actually feels pretty nice and soft. We're going to go out and give that a shot with the black and see if it's our lucky day, or if it's Luciano's lucky day. If you think it's hard to resist these cookies, when you're working hard, going out, chopping ice on a pond, and then you come into the house and you have the smell of Karen's cookies. Amazing how I get anything done. This is really going to be a nice little bike when he's done with it. And as I'm getting older, I appreciate the little bikes I've had over my lifetime. And of course, no, it goes without saying, I love my RD. So we have some pretty bad news for Luciano, unfortunately. We've got an alligator. And this is why I do the test, why I spent that time and energy, and I had a funny feeling this was going to happen. And now, the reason and you can't put paint on any thinner than with an airbrush, not that I know of. There's no other way to do it. And it's with the thinner he gave me with that, and so I don't know if he had. It could be that the thinner that he had, I'm going to have to contact him. I'm going to have to talk to him about this, because the repair on this is going to be pretty extensive. And now think about something. Think about how smart this is. If we had laid out on the tank all the ladders, that would have been a whole day of masking, back masking. Gone and airbrushed it, and this happened, you got to go down to bare metal. Or you got to reprime it with primer sealer. Now, it's going to be up to Luciano to decide, because he's going to have to buy some white paint. I don't have any white paint. So, or we're going to have to do something. I'm not sure what. This is going to be a real, well, I'm glad we can show it in real time, and we can share the information. And why I do all this paint testing is because to have this happen now, really not a giant deal. This, right now, you could say, oh, nobody's going to see that or something. I'm going to see it. That's bullshit. Yeah. And to try to like do something that you know you're walking in a minefield is just crazy. So what I'm going to suggest to Luciano, and it's going to be his decision to make, I'll sand this all down as much as I can. Sand this as much as I can, 400, 600. Prime it with primer sealer, couple of coats. Sand this one down. Now you're talking about day after day of work, though. There's a lot of work in this. So, and I don't want to do a job that I'm not going to be real happy with when a job is over. But so I think there's a lesson to be learned from this video and the one before it. Of always do the test. If you're using 2 different or 3 different kinds of paint that may or may not be incompatible, and anytime you're using a rattle can for any reason, do the test. Sometimes you win. See, right out here, there's no problem. Yeah, well, if the whole part was like that, but it isn't. That's the problem. Now, and you don't know if this little spot here could have come up on the top. And I guarantee you, if I painted this with a real spray gun, which would have ingested more thinner into it, this whole thing would have been an alligator. So, anyway, we tried our best, and sometime you win on this, and when you're doing paints, always do the test. Such an inexpensive insurance policy. One of the problems, I don't have any white left over from my job. In fact, at the end, I was really skimping and drooling around with it. So we're going to have to get a can of white, that's for sure, automotive white, or some other scenario. Now, there are other scenarios, and the best scenario would be if you took acetone right now and took all that white paint off. But boy, is that ever a big job. That's not a one-day job. It gets into where it's crazy time. So now, just to show you another reason it pays to do the test. As I look at this part, I can see it's got cracks in it. I don't know if you can see it. That's paint, a different kind of paint issue that you have. When you mix and match paint, that's an issue. Now, you wouldn't believe it, because look up here, it's beautiful. But you always run some giant risk when you mix and match paint. This is a wonderful lesson to learn. I don't have any time left today. I spent the whole day on this, trying to decide how I could get around this. My feeling is we're going to be taking all that paint off, and I couldn't get a hold of Luciano right now to get an answer. So I'm going to end the video. I hope this lesson is, share it with your friends. It's a good lesson. It's a hard lesson to learn and worth knowing. And again, thanks for watching.